Good morning. Hello there, iNav23ABC, is that eNav? How are you doing this morning? Let me know if the audio sounds alright, if you're able to hear me alright, if the music volume's good. Hey Nav, cool. Hey Nav. Audio's okay? Alright, cool. So, we're doing some web dev. So last week we started on just recreating basically the Twitter interface. So actually maybe I'll pull up Twitter here. And we're just doing the front-end development. Last week we basically built out this section here, the first, the sidebar. And I just noticed we haven't added that little notifications thing, so that's something we could do. But now today we will probably, I think, just build out the middle column here. And so we're just going to be creating dummy data. It's just a sort of a practice and a demo of how I might create this particular user interface. I'm going to do a series of different, recreating Twitter, recreating Twitch, recreating Facebook, and basically just go through with just standard HTML, CSS. We'll go through and build out these interfaces. So if you're a dev, there's a GitHub here, so that's the repo, so this is where the source code is. So if this is something that interests you, you can clone or download this by going to that link that I had pasted up in the chat there. And you can run this. Theoretically, you could just, you're going to use it on a local or on a server. So this is just a local file right now, so literally I could just run index.html and there it is. So it's running local because we're literally just using HTML and CSS so far. There's not even any JavaScript in this, so we can run this right from the file system. Just to make it a little bit better, I'm going to open with Live Server. So I use VS Code with a Live Server extension, so I can just right click and say open with Live Server, and then it's going to be running locally on a local server. But theoretically I'd be able to push this up to Netlify or any hosting plan. And so we've got it just scaffolded here. We've got these three different pieces put in. The other thing too that we could do that Twitter does, so once you get to a certain size, Twitter goes into this icon only mode on the side here. So that's something we could do here too, is today we might add the mobile functionality for that. Or I might just get the whole thing built out and then do the mobile functionality at the end, which is a practice that I typically do. We're just pulling random profile images from Pixum Beard or something like that. It's basically just pictures of people with beards. Placebeard, placebeard.it. We've got a main.js, but it's just saying that JavaScript's loaded. There's nothing in there. And we've got our style. Created some variables and then started building out our classes. You will need to have a communication between users though, right? Yeah, if we're, this is just doing front-end dev, so we're not actually going to build the back-end. Maybe eventually I'll do a back-end tutorial as well where it'll have the interaction, but this is basically to teach front-end development. So once I'm finished with this, I intend to turn it into a tutorial of how you could build Twitter out. So some of the names of the classes and stuff might change, and I may tweak this and tune this up. So we're kind of building it out live just so that you can see how I would particularly solve this problem and display this information. And then, yeah, we're not going to touch the back end at all. We may get into some JavaScript for some functionality, and we could theoretically put it into local storage, and that would allow us to have a full mock-up where we could add tweets and remove tweets and that. And then ideally from there you would have to have a back end with a server. So, but I think for the scope of this, we're just going to build out the UI on the front end. So if we take a look at the center, we've got this one bar at the top here that's a fixed sort of bar, and then there's a form underneath there. So we'll just get started building that out in the HTML first. And here's our main. This is the HTML. Do you do web development? Kinda, yeah. What have you been working with? Have you worked with HTML and CSS, JavaScript? Just fool around with JS, cool. Yeah, it's a fun language, and it's so great that it's available open source. There's so much available to learn. I've been doing JavaScript and software development for about 15 years, and I'm amazed even now just how much easier it is to learn stuff. It's kind of it's easier to learn stuff, but then there's so much more to learn, so it sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming to figure out what to learn, but JavaScript is super fun to play with. Are you into game dev at all? Love the canvas? Yeah, so doing some game dev type stuff? Mostly game dev stuff, yeah, cool. Have you heard of Screeps? Screeps.com? A lot of half-finished projects. Yeah, that's, I think, most game devs, or most devs in general. I've got the same. No, Screeps, so SCREEPS.com. It's this MMO sandbox game, and basically it's like a RTS, real-time strategy game, where you're having to go collect things, and you've got your creeps that go out and harvest things and attack and defend your base. But you have to write the AI in JavaScript for your units, so it's like a teaching / playing game, and you can create whatever UI you want based on some specific parameters, but it's kind of fun. They've got a live demo you can go in and play with. Okay, so for this form here, I've got just a container with this here, and we've got this star, so let's put that in. So we've got our home, and I'm going to put this into a span just so that it's got a container. And then I'll put another span, and this will end up being the stars. And so I went through and found a bunch of font icons, font awesome icons that I thought might be comparable. Obviously, I'm not using the actual Twitter ones. I'm making ones that kind of look similar. So like I said, I went through and just, in the interest of time, found some icons that I thought might work well. And I think I had one for the star. Here we go. So there we go, we've got a star and we've got this home, and there's something going on because there's a bunch of stars and this isn't working, so we'll have to figure that out. Oh, I've got this here, this part of it. So that's our main header, and then we'll need, this will be the tweak form, so I'm just actually going to make this a form. No, I'm going to give div class equals tweet form. Biggest thing I'm struggling with is having something like FS, the library from Node, so file system, yeah, in my HTML without using Node, or using Node but still having a canvas that can easily communicate with the Node app, like a script and an HTML file. Yeah, this is one of the things that I've noticed. So I developed in Cold Fusion originally. For 10 years I was a Cold Fusion developer, server-side language, and then PHP. And that's one of the things that so Node's been newer for me over the last, I'd say, 3 or 4 years. I've been starting to work with Node and JS, and I love that it's all JavaScript so that I can actually code in it and not have to switch between languages all the time. But figuring out some of these new things, like with PHP, you can have PHP and standard HTML and Canvas all in the same file, whereas it seems mostly with Node, lots of times you have to have a separate server for your file system, and that's where you kind of build your back end and you build your front end. And from a security standpoint, it completely makes sense, but it does add a barrier of entry. For the file system, what specifically are you needing to try and access? Writing files, reading files, that's pretty much it, yeah. Writing files for like saving games, or... Yeah, that seems to be kind of the general flow for Node, is you build a backend that handles your file system. So you're kind of building an API that handles the file manipulations, and then you use that API to do that, which works pretty good. It complicates it a little bit, especially if you're working with clients and then you have to try to explain to them why they need 2 hosting platforms. So I've got my class, my div here, which will be sort of this container for this whole entire thing, and I'm kind of seeing this broken up into 2 pieces, I think. We've got this one here, which contains the image, and then this whole thing here, which is actually going to be 2 items, one on top of the other. And I'm just going to use Flex to make this work. The input box, it's just got no styling or anything, placeholder is what's happening, and then we've got these icons and a tweak button. So I think what I can do is actually make a flex box here that's got 2 columns, and then a flex box here that's got 2 objects in columns, and then this will be a flex as well that's spaced between to be able to display those. So we'll kind of mock that up here. I'm going to use, again, just a place beard image for that. So I don't think I can use the form here. I'm trying to figure out where the best place to put the form is, and I think I'm just going to make this whole thing a form. It's good to use a form tag, even though technically you don't need to, because if I was building this I would be using JavaScript, so I would be able to submit it without having a form tag. But in general, best practice would be that you would use an actual form tag. So So now we've got our main, our form, and this starting and ending div. So now this is going to be our tweet form. I'll put that like that. This will be tweet form. Tweet input. And then in here we're going to have an input text. I'm back. Internet decided to hate me. How did you say I can have the file system in my HTML? Yeah, welcome back. Internet's funny sometimes. So I think generally the best, what I've seen a lot of is you have a backend that's written in Node that handles all your input and output of files, and then you have your front end, which would just be your HTML and JavaScript, and then your front end makes calls to the API, to your backend, to handle the inputs, or the file manipulation. And part of the reason for that is that if you have your JavaScript on the front end directly accessing the file system, it's a huge security risk, because then you could manipulate people's files just right out of the browser. How can it make calls? So what you would do is you'd build a Node backend that runs a server like Express. I would use something like Express, and then there's file system plugins that you can use that allow you to read and write files. And then on your front end, you would use something like the Fetch API, or there's an Axios plugin that will make AJAX calls to the back end. So it helps to have them on the same server, so that then you're not having to worry about connecting between the two of them. But it gets a little bit complicated. Another option that you could do that might be simpler. Yeah, it is fairly complex to set it up. Something that might be simpler is to just use PHP, because then PHP works on the server side, and you can serve the files, and you can upload the files and access it. I would look into PHP file upload. I think it would be easier for you than having to figure out the JavaScript side. So it says, what's happening? What's happening? So we've got our tweet input, and we've got an input here, and then we've got our tweet buttons. And then these buttons, there's going to be these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I don't think I had one for a GIF, so I think I'm just going to add 4, and then we've got the tweet. So let's go into here and see what I've got. Tweet buttons, here we go. And I'm going to make them anchor tags so that they would be clickable buttons. Could make them buttons as well, but anchor tags will work. So again, right now I'm just scaffolding out the HTML. I find just doing the HTML and getting that laid out and structured nicely then makes styling a lot easier. So get a block, so we're going to do these 2 blocks here, the main header and the form, and then go into the styling and make adjustments from there. So our tweet buttons, this is going to be icons. And naming is something, naming your classes, like I say, I kind of do it to what makes sense here, and then I'll probably go back afterwards to rename everything so that to make sure that they're consistent. I'm kind of keeping it consistent, and the more you do it, the easier it is to keep that consistency, but it always seems to be nice to go back and just do a pass and make sure that it all makes sense when you're done. So this is going to be the only button, although I'm going to give it a class of tweet button, and it just says tweet. Okay, I think I'm just going to take a screenshot of this so that, well, no, because I'm going to need to check out the hoverings. Okay, so let's make this top part here first. So now if we refresh, we'll see there is something weird going on. So I've got this here, so there's something in my HTML that is not lined up. So let's figure that out first. I've got an ending. My form ends. We've got a div with an image and another div. We have our tweet input, and then we've got the input, and then our tweet buttons, which will be the bottom. Got tweet icons. There we go. That's what it is. I didn't end my icon tag, so that one little slash was what was making it all weird. Okay, there we go. So now we've got home, a star image, bearded guy, what's happening are 4 icons, and then the tweet button. So that will become this here. So let's start with the home first. Main header. So now we want to open up the style sheet and come on down to here, our main. So main header, we'll make it display flex. We'll align the items center, so that's vertical alignment, and then we'll justify content space between, which pushes the 2 items out to the edges. So that'll put this one to the left and then this one to the right. Let's give this a font size of 1.8 rem, so that works up to 18 pixels. It's getting a bit better. We'll probably want a bit of padding. I want this to be bold, and it's actually an icon or a link. So is this. But what does this do? Okay, we're not going to worry about the pop-ups. That's going to be sort of last step. We'll do these pop-ups, and because that'll be getting into JavaScript. So right now we're just doing the CSS. So we got our home button and our star image. So let's make those links just so that they're going to be styled as links. Because when you make something a link, it gets automatically specific styling. So if you don't do that in the markup now, when you add it later, you'll have to readjust the styling. There, so now you will see over here, now we've got an underline here and it's colored with that, so we'll actually want this to be the Twitter blue, so similar to this effect where it's a hover with a background and then the font weight of bold. And so let's give, it looks like it's about 1.5 on the top and bottom and 1 on the side rem, so that'd be 10 pixels. So I do a reset of my HTML font size to 62.5%. So one rem is basically 1 unit of the font size of the HTML element. So what this allows me to do is I can write a media query in HTML that adjusts the font size, which will adjust the font sizes for the whole site, or actually all the measurements for the whole site. So by setting that to 62.5, by default the font size of the HTML is 16 pixels. So if I set it to 62.5%, that is 10 pixels. So the default HTML font size is then 10 pixels, which makes calculating rems a lot easier, because now 1.8 rems is actually 18 pixels. So 1 rem is worth 10 pixels. So we've got our first span. So I think I can just do main header first child font weight, I'll do 700. And so what I think I'm going to do is move this over here and this over here, so we don't have to switch back and forth. We should still be able to see what we're doing here. Yeah, that'll work. So that's not working. Let's try this. No. There we go. And so I want the anchor tags to not have an underline. So we'll move this over to here just so we can see this part here. For our main header, we're going to want some padding. So 1.5 on the top and bottom, and 1 on the left and right. So that's going to be kind of annoying to do that if it refreshes in that way. So let's try this. There. Okay, so that looks a bit better. We've got our home and this here. Obviously I'm using a different star, like I said, for that. I think we might want to go a little bit more. So let's see, does that... And then we'll put this bottom line on, and it's the same line that's on the left and right. So let's find that. So we can set up variables on the root scope, so that way they're accessible, and that way I can easily make changes to the theme. So this way you could create a theme for the UI that would allow you to make changes in one place and update all of the colors. So now we'll go back here, main header, and we want a border bottom. There we go, okay. So it's a little high, so maybe we just need 2 rem all around. Maybe even a little bit less on the top and bottom. So maybe it's actually wider there. So let's try 1.5 rem and 2 rem. We'll go with that for now. And so the other thing that we see is that when you scroll down in this, that home stays up there. So we will actually make this position fixed. So there we go. So there, now we actually have to push the next content down. So I'm going to give this a, instead of a padding, I'm going to give it a proper height, so that way we know exactly how tall it is, so that we can push this content behind it down below. So let's give it a background color for one of the white. So then actually our main will want to put a padding top of, let's say 5 rem, see how that looks. 6 rem. Top 0. There we go. And width 100%. So the width 100% is not going to work because that's actually, so it's staying fixed vertically as well. Okay, so instead of position fixed, I'm going to try position sticky, because that's a new position style that allows it to scroll once you get to a specific section. So, and it actually holds space, so then I don't need this. And there we go, so it's scrolling underneath, but the background color isn't showing up. So let me see. So I don't actually have a white, so that is exactly why. So let's give it a white. And the reason that I would use a variable for white instead of just putting the color in is because what if I wanted to change the background color or any of these other colors to be a subtle off-white or something, then I've got it in one place. And so I may actually add that to here. Background color white. And you're not going to see anything, but at least now if we wanted to change it, so let's say we wanted to make this subtle blue as the background color, we can just change it in that one spot. And I could call this background, but I'm just going to call it white. So there, so now this is sticking to the top, and we've got our space. So that's the difference between fixed and position sticky. Fixed, it acts like a block element, so it still takes up space in the DOM, and it's still 100% is only going to expand to the container that it's in. But whatever the top value is, it will start to stick to the top at that value. So I've got it at 0, so it's staying right at the very top. Whereas position fixed, it's similar to position absolute, where then it takes it out of the DOM, and so when I do 100%, it's 100% of the full width of the screen, the container, and it doesn't take up space in the DOM, so we would have had to add that padding to the top. So our links are also going to be black. And here's another one, actually. I would probably add a color black as opposed to doing it this way, because it's often nice to not have a straight black, which is something at the end. So I'm going to recreate Twitter the way that it is, and then I'll go back and kind of make some little tweaks and see what we can do to adjust it to see how that looks. So instead of black, we want the variable black. Now, this one here, we actually want it to be this style. And so I've done that style up here in the navigation, where we have this hover and this style here. It's going to be a little bit different, but pretty close, I think. So this is something where I might actually create a link class instead of hard coding specific for that. So here I'll put into comments. So I'm going to say hover link, and this will be a dot hover link, and we'll say decoration none. Color is going to be the blue. Border radius, we'll say 25%, and we'll see if that works. And then we need a hover link, hover. Background color will be the blue subtle. And now I just have to give that link a class of hover link. And we'll see how that looks. Now we've got that, and we hover it. Need a bit of padding. So I'm going to change this to 50%, and I'm going to give it a padding of 1 rem. .75 rem. No, that's... So we also want it to be centered so that it's not quite being centered. So I'm going to give a line height of 1 rem just to see if that helps. It does not. One thing I can do is display this flex, justify content center, and align items center. And now that, there we go. And then the padding, probably don't need the line height now. Yeah, that looks pretty good. It's one of the things I was showing last week. So these ones here, they pop when you hover over top of them. They just instantly go, whereas this one here fades. I had put the fade on to these ones, but it actually was a bit jarring. And same with this is the fade. So, and I think theirs is just a straight pop, but I feel like we could make that a fade. We'll worry about that after. I'm going to just increase that just a little bit. And now I need to decrease the padding on the header. So let's just give it 1. That looks pretty good. Feet first. What is happening? We are recreating Twitter from scratch. So just the user interface. So building out, last week we built out this side here. And kind of recreated our own version with these different icons, and now we are working on the center part here. It's just a practice of UI design and HTML and CSS and learning exercise, and demonstrating one possible way of kind of recreating this interface. So we're not going to worry about functionality. We're not going to actually be able to tweet or anything like that. We may get into some of that stuff later on, but my goal with this is to create, I'm going to take common user interfaces, so like Twitter, Facebook, all these ones, and I'm going to create tutorials on how to build those front ends. And then, so right now it's kind of building it out myself and learning the process, and then refining that. We could get into the back end stuff, but for the most part I'm going to stick to the front end for now. Thanks for stopping by. Feet first. So just to give background on myself, I've been a developer for 15 years. I worked for municipal government for 10 years, doing web development and software development. And then I've been freelancing now for the last 5 years. And just recently started doing some streaming and started to get into teaching as well. How's your day going? Good. How about me? It's going good. It's just a 2-hour stream, so I'll be going until about, it's 10:45 here. I'll be going until noon, and then I'm moving to a new place today. So I've got my room here all packed up. I'm literally just sitting in an empty room right now doing my stream. So getting in it, going into a new place, which will be nice. Hope the move goes smooth. Thank you. Yeah, it should go pretty good. I live pretty minimally, so I've got a van that's only about half filled, and that's all my stuff. So it's nice and simple that way. Currently learning C#, so yeah, cool. So are you learning C# for web development, game development? What's your plan for using it? Game dev, cool. Yeah. Game dev was what got me interested in programming, and then I ended up getting a job doing web development and doing that for so long. I've been starting to get back into game development, though. I really enjoy it. And game here off of Vimlark server. Cool. Awesome. Nice. Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate stopping by. Vim's great. I've been really enjoying being inspired by watching him game dev. It's reignited that part of me that loves game dev and really is fascinated by it, but never kind of pursued it because I was coding 8 to 10 hours a day, all day, writing business software. So it was like, do I have the energy to continue to code after that? And now that I'm doing freelancing, I'm kind of finding a better balance of computer work and other work so that I have a bit more bandwidth to be able to do fun projects like this and to do projects like game dev. You watch the streams? Yeah, I watch Vim's streams as well. He was in here actually. He came and hung out for a little bit last week when we were doing, so on Mondays I do web development, and then on Wednesdays I do pixel art. So now I'm going to start styling this part here. And so the first thing I notice is that we've got this big gray bar at the bottom. So I'm going to put that in there just so we can see visually what we're doing. We've got a class of tweet form in there. So I'm going to tweet form. So normally I would use something called Sass, which allows me to compile down to CSS, standard CSS, which allows for nesting. So best practice, I would do main tweet form here to directly reference the tweet form, but in Sass, if I did it, I would do main like this, and then I would have tweet form inside there. So that then it would actually compile down to main.tweetform. But in the interest of keeping it as simple as possible, I wanted to keep this to just HTML and CSS so that literally if you're wanting to create this, you could do this in Notepad. What language is this? This is just CSS. So this, we've got our index HTML, which is the building blocks, the structure of your site. So this is like you setting up containers. So this is the main container that holds this part here. And then CSS is for the styles. So this is how it's laid out. CSS is what it looks like. And so now I've got, so we just scaffolded this part here. We've got our main section, which represents this center column here. And then there's a main header, which is this top part here. And it's got the home link and the star icon over here. And then we've got this tweet form section here, so that's what we're going in and styling now. So this code here basically creates this, and then now we can reference it with these classes. So I've got my tweet form there, and I can give a border bottom of, let's just say 1 rem. So a rem in this case here is 10 pixels. And I'm going to do this gray. Not 1 pixel, so border bottom, 1 rem, solid, gray. So we're not seeing it here. Is there a reason you specifically chose that image? So this, every time I refresh, it'll grab a new image. I'm using a thing called PlaceBeard. And it's just a random image generator. It's right here, PlaceBeard. Yeah, it's I thought it fitting for the stream to, rather than use, you could use any kind of pictures. There's a bunch of these, like there's Place Kitten, I think was the first one, where you can just use this and then you give it a size and it'll give you an image that's a kitten. What software for pixel art? I use Sprite for when I'm doing pixel art. And that's so my profile image plus I can go into the be right back screen here, so that running guy there, that's one of the ones that I've been working on. So I've added this tweet form here. It's got a class and I've given it a border. I misspelled border, that's why. There we go. So now we're seeing this gray here is the same as this gray here. And that looks pretty close to the right size, I would say. And I think that's all we need to do for this guy. Oh no, we need to display flex, which will put everything side by side. And the way that I've set it up, so I've got a container, the main container here has 2 columns, so that's what display flex will do, is put these side by side, so that's here and here. And then I've got my input, and so I've got another container, which this is one container, this is another container. This container is going to also be display flex, but flex direction will be column, so that instead of side by side, they'll be above and below each other. Well, let's get this image styled first. How many followers? I think I've got 5. I had 5 at the beginning of the stream. So I just started streaming, I think this is probably about my 6th time. Cool, thanks man, I really appreciate that. I don't get to see if anybody follows. I haven't set up my, I'm streaming directly on the on my laptop. I've only got my one screen, so I'm working on trying to, when I move into the new place, I'm going to have another screen so I can start to see when people follow. So yeah, thank you for the follow. That's awesome if you're following now. I'm looking forward to being able to tell when people follow so that I can definitely say thank you, because I really appreciate it. can see the overlay that says I followed. You can, yeah. Yeah, you can see the overlay, but I, for some reason, can't. I don't have. There we go. Now it's, if I switch, so my streaming setup, I've got just literally my laptop, and it's using the onboard camera. I've got an external mic, but then I am using my phone to see the chat. So I can either have the chat up, or I can have the remote control that allows me to switch scenes, or I can have the events up that tells me what's happened. So right now, if I'm wanting to see what's chat, which is my main focus, obviously, I can't see the notifications. Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of a cool, that's what I love about the idea of streaming, is that I can build the stream as we build a community around this particular content. So as I get more support from the community, I can support the community better by having better equipment, and it's just a really cool reciprocal experience. So let's get that image style. So I've given it a class of tweet image. And we want to reference the image within it, and I'm going to give it, let's see how I did it with this one here. Dot profile and image. So dot profile image. There we go. So this is another case where I've got it being displayed down here, and then I kind of want it to be displayed the same. And obviously this one's a little bit smaller, but all of these are going to be the same size. So instead of rewriting the code again, I'm going to go down to my common section here, and I will give a class of profile image, and that way I can just give that class to the image instead of having to rewrite the styles each time. And that is these styles here. So in Sass, if I was using Sass as a pre-compiler, I could create a kind of a variable that allows me to just say use these styles again. But with standard HTML and CSS, this is kind of the way to do it. Gotta go in a minute. Work? Cool. I don't stream tomorrow, but I stream Wednesday from 5 till 7. I don't know what time it is for you there right now, but it's 11 right now. But yeah, next time, my two confirmed streams that I'm trying to hold down is Monday this time here from 10 to noon, doing web dev, and then Wednesday 5 till 7 doing pixel art. But gotta go. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, thanks for stopping by. We'll catch you next time. And I do random streams throughout the week when I have time too. But yeah, great to chat with you. Look forward to seeing you again. Thanks again for the follow. Have a good day at work. Bye. Cool, so now I've created this class, so now I'm going to just give this image that class. Image class equals there. And so we'll see, there we go, okay. And so it might be a little bit small because this one's actually a bit bigger. So we'll go through a whole refactoring actually. I'm going to make some notes for refactoring. Refactoring. Actually, I'm going to throw those notes into the README so that they end up on the Git repo and we can go back through them together on stream at the end. So let's go refactoring. We will want to create a class for profile image and use, we just want to adjust the nav bar profile image to use profile image class to do. Cool. Okay, so we got that. Obviously we need a bit of space in there and it needs to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to make the default one actually 5 rem. And then this is the one that would need to be adjusted. So that looks pretty good. And that will be the same one that gets used all in here. And so we can kind of use the same structure because this is a column of the same size. So that's another thing that we could refactor. Common classes for main content. So let's just give that a bit of space there. So form class, our tweet image, I'll give the tweet image a padding of 1 rem. And let's just see how that looks. Looks pretty good. I think that that's good. I think we'll just leave it at that. This I'll put back. Yep. And I don't want it to be locked. There. Okay, so we have that image showing up. Now let's style the input. Tweet input is the container for this, so that's going to be display. Let's just do that first. So let's, we don't need to do that anymore because we've added the class. So tweet input, we'll make this display flex, flex direction column. And that shouldn't see anything different there until we and I'll reference this specifically as type equals text because the button will also be an input. Let's make this display flex 1. I don't know if I even need to do that. I might just no. So it's not going to make a difference. Let's just make this width 100%. So that doesn't seem to be referencing it. So tweet input type equals text. So come into our developer tools and take a look and see why it's not changing. So if I go into here, so it is being applied, but it's not working because it is of display blocks. So let's make it display flex. No. Let's just see. Okay. So it is allowing me to... Oh, I see, okay. So our tweet input width 100%. There we go. That's why. So this wasn't expanding because tweet input was a display flex, which meant that it was just the size of the content that was in there. So as soon as I now made it go all the way across, now the input's gone all the way across. So, need a little bit more space on the top and bottom. So let's do that, and we'll increase the font size quite a bit. So font size, 2.2 rem. Let's see how that, maybe not quite that big. 2 rem. Yeah, that looks good. And would be the border none. And we'll give it a padding of 1 rem, 1.5 rem. So 1 on the top and bottom, 1.5 on left and right. Now the challenge with doing that, we want this to be able to line up, so we actually don't want any padding on the left and right. So this should be 0, and then we'll put padding on the top and bottom. And it needs to be a lighter gray, so I am actually blanking on doing the placeholder text. I think input type equals text placeholder. And then this will make it red just to see if that, cool. So that's how you adjust the placeholder color. And I want to make it the gray subtle. Does that look like it's actually doing it? It doesn't. Oh, dash var. What's going on here? Oh, I don't need the bar there. I need the bar there. There we go. Font weight 400. Yeah, I think I need a bit darker gray. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And font's a bit different because I'm using Open Sans and they're using Segua or Segoi, I believe. Let me think. I'm using Open Sans font family. So I'm specifying that, but I don't think that it's grabbing it. What are they doing here? System UI. So it's almost like it's grabbing these ones first. So I think I might do that just to see how that looks. Our font, let's add, oops, our system UI and Apple system in front. Sure. Okay, so that looks pretty good. That looks pretty good. There's a bit more space on this side than maybe we need. So let's adjust that. Tweet form. Tweet image. It's got padding of 1. Do I want 1 all the way around? Let me take a look and see. So there is spacing in there, that's why it looks a little bit weird. So I think what I'm going to do is center this image instead. So I should be able to just do text align center here. Nope. So the tweet image, and then it's got an image inside. So let's just make this a display flex. Align, justify content center. And you're back? Work get cancelled maybe? Margin right. Ah, okay, that margin right. I don't need that margin right, that's why. So I can actually get rid of this, go back down to here, and I don't need a margin right on the image. That'll be done by the container. So now I think I need a little bit more space on the left and right. So I think I will go to 1 on the top and 1.5 on the left and right. That looks better. Do more homework while washing, yeah, cool. What kind of work do you do when you need to go to work? So we got 4 buttons, or there's 5 here. I'm only going to put 4 in because I couldn't find a GIF icon, so this is going to be a little different, and it's kind of the same styling as this, so maybe I will create that if I didn't already. I think I did a hoverlink class. So I should, in theory, let's take a look at the tweet buttons, tweet icons. So that's the specific icons. So let's make them a little bit bigger. Oh, and I want tweet buttons to be display flex so we can space them out. So let's do that first. Our tweet buttons is the container that has these icons and the tweet button in there. We're going to make that a display flex line item center, so that's for vertical centering, and justify content space between. I'm also going to give this a padding. I think the top is good, but we'll give 1.5 on the right, and then 1.5 on the bottom, and then the left none as well. So that looks pretty good. Yeah. Tweet icons, will give that a font size of 1.8 rem, 18 pixels. That looks pretty good. German, that's your homework, German homework? So because I created, this hover link class for anchors, I can actually just now add it to my tweet icons instead of having to style them directly. So now I can just add this here and here and here. And so now actually I'm going to have to change my tweet icons to also display flex so that they display in line. So our tweet icons display flex. And that should put them side by side. And they're a little bit big. So maybe I just need to shrink down the padding a little bit on the style. Let's just make it 1. That's better. Yeah. That works. The color is the blue and the subtle blue is the background. So that's interesting. So here's something that Twitter doesn't seem to have done. Best practice, you should give your links a title so that when you hover over it, you know what it does, whereas these ones don't actually do that. So an example of that would be on here. I can say title equals calendar. So that then when I hover over this, I can see that that's the calendar. How broad are you planning to make this project? Because it would be cool if you could get bots to post. I don't think that I'll actually take this to necessarily where it'll be a functioning system. I think I'll probably put it up on GitHub so then it's a open source that somebody can take, and if they want to create more, I mean it's Twitter's content so I can't really do too much with it. Theoretically, if you liked the style of this, you could take it and build your own back end and then change it to be what you wanted, but my intention isn't to create a Twitter knockoff in any way. It's just to show how you can build the Twitter UI. So that's kind of how broad I would say I'm going to take that. Does that make sense? But yeah, the repo is open source, free on GitHub. If you're wanting to pull the code out and play with it yourself, you're more than welcome. Educational, yeah, exactly. So we have this button tweet, and it looks like I've already created a class that's a common class right here. So I should be able to just add that class to this button. And I think it's also a tweet. So let's, instead of calling this tweet button, I'm going to give it that class and see what happens. Cool. So obviously that's way bigger than it needs to be. When we have it on the side over here, it expands quite a bit, whereas this one here, it doesn't need to. So let's see what happens when I do that. No, okay. And so the reason for that is that we actually have a width of 20 rem. And so a couple ways I could handle this. By default, if I take that off, it's going to fit to this size, which is actually what we want. That's how this is. It's like that. But then that shrinks this one down. So I think the best way to handle it, we could either hard code this one here to shrink down to this size, or what we can do, which I think is the better way to do it, is use it the default so that it will be the size of the text content, and then this one here, because it needs to be wider, is all explicitly set the width of this particular button. We can do that because this one I've just given it a class of button, the other one I've given a class of button and tweet. So the class of tweet I can add that width to. So if I look tweet, so I haven't actually styled that. Okay, so that's fine. So in my navigation up here, I'm going to do button tweet, and I'll put that width of 20em back in there. So that way that will be the better size there. Never used GitHub. What is it? Hard coding would be giving it its own class. Okay, so yeah, so GitHub is a version control software. So last week we've got this commit. So basically we created the code and we built out this first half here, and then at the end I committed and pushed that to this repo. So that means that the code is available here for anybody to download. So you could download this, or you could clone this code. You can view it right here. Actually right now there should be 2 commits. So I didn't push it. Okay. Git push. So from my command line, I can, everything is up to date. Interesting. For some reason, it's not getting the most recent one, so that'll be something I'll have to fix. But yeah, so basically, if I look at the status, now I can see that since I started and since I pushed, I've made changes to these particular files. So I can add those and then make a comment, and then when I push it, it actually pushes that code up to here so that it's the most recent version. And then you can version control, so you can go back through your commits and get the code at any particular point. So it's a really good still want to learn. Yeah, it's a really good way for managing code, for keeping code manageable. And then hard coding would be giving it its own name. So hard coding is typically referred to, so it'd be the difference between setting this as blue or hard coding of value. So hard coding means that where I've got this blue, I'm explicitly saying that it's this color blue. And then everywhere in my page, if this was also blue, I would need to make this blue. So that's called hard coding. It's coding it explicitly for a specific thing. Doing the variables, as opposed to doing that, is a better approach for things that are repeating. So like that particular blue I'm using quite a bit in this. So rather than hard code that specific value, I've created a variable up here, and then I can reference that variable, so that if I wanted to change this, so let's say we wanted all of a sudden Twitter to be red, now everything on the page is already turned to red, so I don't have to go through this and change everywhere that I set that blue. Does that make sense? So I can basically make a game without needing to know how to program. Well, Vim makes games without doing a whole lot of programming. So like I would watch the way that he does it. It's good to, I mean, like Vim shares too, it's whatever tools allow you to work, and coding is its own practice and art is its own practice, and I'm kind of going the other way where I'm starting to learn art and I really enjoy it, but I'm better at coding. So when I make games, I might use assets at first instead of creating my own, because it's going to take me so much longer, but I want to be able to create my own assets. And Vim likes using the visual code editor, and it would be a big commitment to try to learn to code separately from that, and it works for him, so that's the way that he's been doing it. He uses Construct 3, which is $100. I don't think it's $100 a month. I think it's $100 a year, I believe. I haven't played with it. I've been using Godot, or Godot, Godot, for my engine to play with, and I haven't used the visual code editor, but apparently they do have a visual code editor in it as well. Oh yeah, a year, yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely a commitment. It's something you'd need to save for or figure out, but I would play with Godot and check out the visual code editor. Like I said, I haven't played with it, so I don't know if it's any good or how well it works, but it might give you the same ability to be able to code or create games without having to code. So noticing the top has a little bit less space than the bottom, so I think my best approach for that would be to just add some padding to the top of the tweet form to just separate that out. So let's find that, and we'll give a padding top of 0.5. Yeah, that looks better. And I'm going to take that outline off of that. outline none. Alright, so that's kind of the same. Again, like I said, different icons, but you get the same idea. And so their button is subtle here until you start to type, because it won't let you type until it won't let you submit the tweet until you've entered some content. So some of this we might need JavaScript for. I'm not going to worry about these two buttons. I'm not even sure what that is. It must be a new. Interesting. You can add a thread. I've never seen that feature before. But this subtle effect, we can definitely do that. So let's just simulate that. I might bump up the font size just a little bit and the letter spacing, because it seems a little crunched there. Tweet buttons. Tweet buttons button. We will make the font size 1.6 red. See if that's a little bit better. And the letter spacing, I'm just going to put 0.5 pixels. It just gives it just a tiny bit. It's super subtle, but it does make a difference. So there versus there. Yeah. And then I think what I will do is so what we want to do is have so that when there's text in it, this is active, and when there isn't, it isn't. So I think there's a couple ways that we could do that. There's some plain CSAs with, you'll be back, cool, see you soon. I could put the button right after it, but then I'd have to position it in a weird way. So I think I'll use JavaScript for that to detect whether or not there's input in here. I won't worry about trying to do it as a straight CSS model. But what I will do is give it a disabled, colon disabled. Is it? Yeah. And we'll just give it an opacity of 0.6. And we will make it disabled by default. Cool. So actually that's not that button specific, so I want to put that into the button itself. So disabled opacity of 0.6, and then we want not disabled. There. So there we go, we got that built. This gray is a little bit subtler. Let's see what else we've got. We've got our gray, and then we've got our gray subtle. But if I use the gray subtle, it's a little bit too subtle. Oops. Gray. Text. Placeholder. Gray. So just makes it too light. Gray is just a little bit too dark, so let me just lighten the gray a little bit. You're back. Welcome back. So I'm just adjusting this color a little bit because the gray seems to be just a bit too dark. And I don't even know if I'm using it anywhere yet. No. So good. So I can make adjustments to it. Oh, there we go. Okay. Yeah, that looks better. You can actually see what's happening. What's happening. I think that home needs to be a little bit more bold. Let's see what happens if I bump that up. Yeah, there we go. That looks closer. Cool. So now we're getting into the tweets themselves. So it's a standard structure, obviously. There's same layout as up here. We've got our profile image on this side. Maybe a way to copy and paste colors. Yeah, there definitely is. So a couple ways. I've got a plugin here that will actually allow me to grab whatever color I want. And so we could try grabbing this one. I think that might even be what I did, but it seems sometimes it's not exactly perfect. And that gives me the hex instead of the RGB, but that's fine. Yeah, that looks good. Good call. Where do you get plugins from? That's just a Chrome extension, so I'm using Chrome, so I just looked up Chrome Color Picker extension, and that's where that one came from. Other ways that you can do that, so I don't know if you're familiar with it, but if you push F12, it opens up the developer toolbars. And then you can inspect elements, so if I click on here, it's going to bring me the code, and I can actually see the styles that have been applied to it, and I can find this background color is right here. I could go over to computed, and then you can actually see it there as well. So that's another way to find out colors on websites. And that's actually how you can look at the code for, you like messing with that? Yeah, the DevTools is a great way to learn and to figure out how to, how things are built and make changes. You can make changes on the live site too. It obviously doesn't save it, but if I didn't want this image here, I can just delete it. Let's delete that there. Or if I wanted this person's name to be changed, I can made a GitHub account. Cool. Yeah, so I'm Jesse J. Burton on GitHub. If you follow, I've got a bunch of repos on there that are different projects. All of the ones that I'm doing for these are going to be available in there. And when I'm done the code, or done for the day streaming, I'll push the new code to the stream. Or to the repo. So we got 30 minutes left, so let's create a tweet. So that's our top piece. So this here is going, oops, tweets. And I'm just going to create one, and then I'll just clone it over and over. And in that we've got our this? Tweet image. Tweet image. And then this is going to be another randomly generated profile image. And then we've got the tweet. I'm going to make this a header. So header dot tweet header. And this is going to be where the person's name is, their tag, when it was posted, so a number of minutes, and then this icon. So this whole first column will be this tweet header. And so in there I need a section for this left stuff, which is author info, and then this drop down element. So let's create a author info div, and then we will create a drop down. In the drop down, we just need that down caret. Did I grab one of those? Doesn't seem like I did. Tweets, share, search, circle. So that's the back arrow. I'm going to use, I think if I do down, that'll work. Think you followed me? Cool. That's the my profile picture there. Burton Media as well. It's just github.com/Jesse J. Burton. Cool. In our author info, we're going to have a span for the author name, author tag, and then it looks like there's a dot. I'm going to put that into the time though. So span dot author time. So I'm just going to say 9 minutes, and like I say, so this is another example of hard coding. By default in the true Twitter, this information would all come from a database or some kind of external source. That's kind of what I was saying about how you set up a server. The server is the back end and it gets this data. So we'd have to create one of these, and then it would be filled by the database. Whereas because this is just a mock-up, we actually have to create them all ourselves. So I'm just creating one, and I'm hard coding, meaning manually writing in this information. So I'm going to just put my tag in there and say that this is me. And I think that should be good. So let's see how that looks. Oh, I've broke something. Main class equals main. This should be main. I think maybe that will work. And then this would be a div. Does that look better? Cool. There we go. So by default, it's always going to grab the same pictures. So one way that I can change that is, I think if I just give this a different URL, there we go. Yeah, so now we're going to grab different images for these ones here. And then we've got this down arrow, which that's not the arrow that we want. So I think I will grab the actual down caret from Font Awesome. So if you are looking for icons at all, Font Awesome's a really great place for getting access to icons to use on websites. If you look followers, it will say you as a user. Let's see. It's not showing. Oh, there we go. Feet first started following you. Cool. Awesome. Yeah, so Font Awesome. This is Font Awesome 6. I don't want Font Awesome 6. I want fontawesome.io. H3H394. Good to see you. How are you doing today? So this is interesting. So Font Awesome literally must have just in the last day released version 6. They've been on 5 for quite a while, and so it all is quite a bit different from what I'm used to. But we're looking for a down caret for this. Instead of like that, we want one that looks more like this. Oh, and it's got that same hover class. And then when we hover over this, it gives that subtle background as well. And then there's a border. So that's a border on the top and the bottom when you're hovering. Cool. Here we go. Caret down. I'm doing good as well. You're doing good? Cool. We got about 20 minutes left of the stream. I just we're doing so about me. I do software development, web development. I've been doing it for about 15 years, and then I also stream pixel art on Wednesdays. So looks like my internet's being funny. Hopefully the stream's still up. So what I'm doing just as a learning exercise and a teaching exercise is I'm basically recreating Twitter from scratch, just using standard HTML, CSS, and then maybe some JavaScript, but for now just HTML and CSS. So literally from your text editor, I'm using VS Code, but you could do this with Notepad. Last week we created this left sidebar, and then today we've been working on this centerpiece here. So hopefully we'll be able to get to where we have a single tweet in the up by the end of the stream. Right now we're just grabbing a icon here to replace this particular icon. This a bit further so we can get all that in there. I'm not sure, just found on the stream on Twitch. How can anyone use Notepad in 2020? Yeah, I don't think I would want to build it in Notepad, but my goal, so I'm going to turn this into a tutorial on how to build websites, and in a course that I'm working on, we will start literally from building a website, a simple, just a hello world from Notepad, just because I find sometimes it's a little bit daunting for people to download all this Visual Studio Code or use all these editors. So I just want to show people that at its heart, coding is as simple as writing in Notepad. Yeah, VS Code's been my favorite. I did use Dreamweaver for a long time when I worked for municipal government, and then when I left there, I started using Sublime Text for a while, which was a good one, and then now I've found VS Code, and I've stuck with it for the last 4 or 5 years and really enjoy it. Oh, so we also have this bar here and this thing here, which we won't worry about for today. We're just going to do a standard tweet. So let's just grab some text. We'll just grab some lorem ipsum text. Sounds like a cool project to build. Might do it as well later on. Yeah, it's a fun recreating user interfaces, especially like common ones like Twitter, is a really good way to learn lots of new things. They've obviously got teams of people figuring out the little nuances of it. So using well-made or already proven UIs is a good way to learn what does work, or can be a good way to learn what does work. So this will be the tweet body, and I'm just going to throw a paragraph in there. We'll break this up into no, because Twitter is 144 characters, so we'll just make it that. And we're not going to worry about if it's got links or videos or anything like that for now. This is just to get some content in there. And then we've got these 4 buttons at the bottom, which I don't know if we'll have time to add those in today. So for today, we'll see if we can just get this styled correctly. So I'm noticing all of a sudden something is broken again. Div. Let's end that. There we go. Cool. So let's start styling. So we've got our tweet with a tweet image in there, and then I actually need to group this as content. And then we will have a footer, tweet, footer. And this will be where the icons are. So we'll just put that in there for now. I'm doing web development only, no experience in game dev. Is there a reason you don't use... Yeah, so I do in my... Well, I don't use SCSS or Sass. I was sharing that with Feet First a little bit earlier too. I typically, in my day-to-day, I always use CSS and Sass. This is going to be part of a learning exercise, so I feel learning the fundamentals of CSS without Sass is an easier barrier of entry for people, so then they don't have to worry about figuring out compilers. So this will be written in standard CSS. The course that I'm building right now, it starts out with kind of a standard to-do app, but instead of just a to-do app, it's also an hour tracking thing. And we start building out just the front-end UI in standard HTML, CSS. Then we add JavaScript for functionality. Then we'll add Sass to improve that. And then we'll add a backend to it so that in the end of the course, you'll have a basically a ticketing system for freelancing for your clients to be able to submit tickets and track your hours. I think it would be cool if you had randomly generated usernames and display names. Yeah, there's lots of, like, I'm using place beard to get these images here. There's lots of APIs that you can use to put those in. There's even user profiles, so we could generate this randomly. I think where we'll end up taking this to is just to a place where it'll have dummy data in there, and maybe using local storage, we will be able to submit a tweet and it'll show up in there, and that'll show us everything from the JavaScript, everything from the front end side of things. Got you. Yeah, it's better having it in standard CSS for beginners. It's meant to be in a tutorial. Yeah, exactly. That's my thinking too. You like bots, yeah. H3, what's your experience with dev? How long have you been doing web development? So our tweet image is going to be the same, but our this is actually going to be the same as our .tweet. There, so that puts those two side by side. Yeah, and the other thing too with not using Sass, because it's going to be a tutorial, I'm live streaming the process of creating it, and then I'll have to go through and refine and refactor and make it as simple as possible and make sure all the class names line up. And so did I save that? No, I didn't. Okay, I did not save that. Font awesome icons. Around a year and a half, just HTML, CSS, JS, and currently learning React for past 2 months. Yeah, React's awesome. That's what I've been doing for about 2 years now, and it's a really cool to having come from jQuery and other JavaScript and been writing JavaScript and HTML and CSS for, like I say, 15 years. React, it's really cool to work with React and see how the community has built this framework that actually fixes a lot of the stuff that as devs we've had to build manually for many, many years. So in a lot of ways, React is allowing developers to build really cool stuff really, really fast because it's super streamlined, but it does have a bit more of a barrier of entry to get used to. So getting a really good solid understanding of JavaScript and logic is super helpful. You can make a course on Learn Monthly or something like that so people can learn this awesome stuff and you can get a bit of cash. Yeah, I mean, ultimately I want to have a kind of a bit of a balance, offer free content through streaming like this, some YouTube tutorials, and then release my course, which would be sort of a passive income stream. It also allows me to develop. I've been writing code for so long, I'm kind of wanting to switch more towards teaching, just because code writing is great, but it does burn you down for a while. I for sure burned out in my last job. Like I said, I've been freelancing now for 5 years, but I certainly was burned out by the end of that career. I do have a YouTube. I don't have any. It's mostly just fun videos so far. I haven't put any dev content up yet. I'm kind of in the process of working on building that right now, and then I'll be posting some. This will be one of them. So this Twitter, once I'm finished building it, I'll build a tutorial on it. That's a lot more streamlined and cleaned. So yeah, Jesse J. Burton on YouTube as well. So there, now I've got that icon. So this tweet header, we actually want this to be display flex so that we can display them across there. I also want the tweet font size to be a bit bigger. So let's do that down here. 1.6, let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. And then the header, we want it to be display flex. Awesome, thanks for the follow, H3. Appreciate that. I don't have a heads up display for letting me know when people follow, so I didn't actually see when you followed. So, but I took a look now and noticed, so thank you very much. So we will align these center, justify content space between. And so that pushes them out that way. And I will just add some padding on the right of one rem to just make that stick out a little bit. Now obviously that's going to be a link, not just a image, so I will put a placeholder link in there as well. Cool. Now we've got our author info, or author name, the tag, and then the time. So let's font weight 500, 600. I think I'll have to go 700. And that gives the name. We also want the tweet to be gray when we hover over top of it, and it does not have that bottom. So we actually have to get rid of that. Whoops. I will move this down. So we don't want the border bottom on there, we just want it on the tweet. So I'll give that there. We do, however, want a border bottom of 1 pixel solid, and we'll make it the gray subtle. And I will give a padding bottom of 1 rem as well. And I think, do we have padding on the top and the bottom? Yeah, I think that looks pretty good. Our tweet. So the author name has a link. So I'm just going to make this like that. And we'll make it the black. What do they do? So it's not underlined, so text decoration none, but when you're hovering, we'll give it a text decoration of underline. Author, oops, name. There we go. The tag is the lighter gray, and then the background of the tweet itself is going to be hover. We want a background color of gray, and it might be the gray subtle. So we want it a lot lighter than that. Interesting. So let's use that color picker again. Let's go back to here, and I will grab this color here. Nope. Sometimes the color picker does not work great. Let's try that. You sub now? Cool, thanks man. That's what Font Awesome used for. Font Awesome is just a selection of fonts that you can use for the web that rather than, so all of these icons, so it's just an icon collection. So instead of having to design these icons, I can use Font Awesome, and they've got hundreds of different icons to be able to choose from. There we go, that color looks a bit better. And then we just need to make the tag, I think the font's a little bit smaller, and same with the time, and it will be tweet as well, when we hover, it actually gets a border bottom, or a border bottom of the darker gray on the top and the bottom, is what it looks like to me. So let's see when we do that. It's a little jarring. They've got it a little bit different, so there's ways that we can fix that. But for now, and it's the cursor icon, so I'm just going to make it a cursor pointer. And one last thing is the author tag and author time are both the gray color, gray, and we'll make it just a little bit 1.6 rem smaller. So we may need to change that because it looks a little bit too light. Yeah, that's definitely way too high. So next week we'll get into the colors, we'll fix that, and we'll fix this jumping here, and maybe fix the spacing, and then we'll get into adding these icons here. But that is where we're at for today. New Vimlark video? Cool, yeah. Mondays are his day for doing creative stuff, so I don't know if he's streaming right now. Actually, let's check it out and see what's going on Twitch. We can maybe raid somebody. No, he's not doing. Have you been to White Vault? Have you seen White Vault? I'm going to be heading out here to go move right away. But are you into pixel art? Because White Vault's really awesome pixel artist, super nice guy, game dev too. He's building a game called Captain Carrot, and super good community too. So I think I will raid him. Hold up before you go. Yeah, for sure. Love the stream and hope the move goes smooth. Cool, thanks, man. Yeah, it was really good to chat with you. Really glad that you got some use out of it, and we'll definitely see you next time. And come by, yeah. My Thursday or Wednesday night, 5 to 7 Pacific time is when I'll be doing pixel art, and then we'll continuing on with the Twitter stuff on Monday next week. So yeah, take care. See ya, H3, if you're still in there. Thanks everybody for coming by. See you next time.
just thought it'd be fun for a couple of months to have a carrot with a sword who jumps around, you know, and you decide if you're gonna say Princess Apple Pie or Beat Boy. Like, I just thought he's 14 and his game's trying to deep. I'm not saying that. Oh my god. Is he gonna be cheap with the game? Yeah, it's gonna be so deep, guys. How are you, Jesse? I know that's not what you're saying. You know what? You don't have anything. World, you don't scream how wrong it is. Deep. Oh my god, guys. I'm gonna be on one of those YouTube things. 10 upcoming indie games that are trying to take it too deep. Thank you very much for the 15 bits, Jane Nix. Oh my god, thank you very much, Matzi Mix, for the 10 bits. Thank you very much, Matzi Mix. My lord, gifting a tier 1 thing to Eisen TM. Thank you so much. He's deeper than deep. I'm not carrot with a sword, but exactly. What skin is that for Ace Bright? This is for it's HD Dark. I've been using it for a while. I like it a lot there, Pete. So deep, no problem.